Greetings, friends. It's me, Wayman 29, once again. Got a PM. The gist of the PM was, Wayman, you dummy. You complain about Strobel. You complain about all the Christian scholars. What kind of stuff do you read? And who do you consider good authors that come out of these theological seminaries and good scholars of biblical literature? So, I got a list here, and as I said before, that at times it is challenging to be a part of a theological seminary, but there are people who can actually overcome that and contribute large amounts to the field of biblical scholarship. And they're from all denominations. They're from all denominations. So you don't necessarily have to read agnostics and atheists about New Testament criticism, because there are plenty. Even though some of those writers are good, Bart Ehrman is an agnostic. He's very good at New Testament criticism. However, there's some very good writers coming from theological seminaries, which I'll give a list of. Some of these might go on for a while. I was first introduced, one of my favorite authors on especially Old Testament criticism is Frank Cross. And there's Elliot Friedman, who's also good, and a few others. But I'm just going to go down a list and list some where these scholars have attended school that I read quite a bit. Francis Anderson, Professor, Studies in Religion, University of Queensland, Australia. Marcus Beth, Professor of New Testament, University of Basel, Switzerland. Helmut Blake, Doctor of Theology from University of Basel. Robert Boiling, Professor of Old Testament at McCormick Theological Seminary, Chicago. John Bright, Professor, Emirates, Union Theological Seminary, Richmond, Virginia. Raymond E. Brown, a really good New Testament Catholic scholar. Professor of Biblical Studies, Union Theological Seminary, New York City. George Buchanan, Professor of New Testament, Wesley Theological Seminary. Mordecai Kogan, Chairman, Department of Biblical and Ancient Near Eastern at Ben Gurion University in Israel. Mitchell Dahoud, Professor of Ugaritic Literature and Literature. The Pontifical Biblical Institute in Rome. He's a really good writer, actually. Wrote extensively on the Psalms and studied the Ugaritic texts. So I read a lot of him. Alexander Delala, Professor of Old Testament, Catholic University of America. Joseph Fitzmyer, Professor of New Testament, Catholic University of America. Victor Furnish, Professor of New Testament, Perkins School of Theology, Southern Methodist University. Jonathan Goldstein, Professor of History and Classics, University of Iowa. Delbert Hillers, Spence Professor of Semitic Languages, Department of Near Eastern Studies, Johns Hopkins University, Baltimore. Let's see, a few others. Johannes Monk, Professor of New Testament Exegesis in Aarhus University in Denmark. I'm probably pronouncing some of these wrong. Carly Moore, Department of Religion, Gettysburg College. Eric M. Myers, Associate Professor, Department of Religion at Duke University. E.A. Spicer, I have one of his signed copies of the book. Chairman of Department of Oriental Studies, University of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. He wrote and also did translations of, I believe it was, Ugaritic texts, and some of his translations are in ancient Near Eastern texts related to the Old Testament by James Pitchard. David Winston, professor of Hellenistic and Judaic Studies, graduate, Theological Union. Moshe Winfield, professor of Biblical and Ancient Near Eastern Studies, Institute of Advanced Studies, Hebrew University, Jerusalem. And R.B.Y. Scott, professor of Emirates Department of Religion, Princeton University. Jack Sasson, professor, Department of Religious Studies, University of Carolina. And also Albright was a good author. And David Coogan, who translated Ugaritic texts into English. So all these scholars, plus a lot of scholars in Biblical Archaeology Review magazine who write these articles, people whine about quite a bit. But these are the people who are making the real contributions. People with the real degrees out there doing the hard work. They aren't selling books, on the bestsellers list. Some have. What I'm saying is, these are the people who are really behind it. And you get people like Strobel, who doesn't even have any kind of background, in-depth background. Doing seminaries and making the bazillions of dollars out front. That's just the facade that's in front of biblical studies. These people do seminars trying to sound as if they are biblical scholars, when in fact they're not, and they convince the general public that they're right, which does a huge disservice to both scholarship and learning and understanding the biblical text, both spiritually and secularly. Probably not a word, but and spiritually. I think I already said that. But I don't know. So that's just some readers I read, and there are some very good Christian scholars that I appreciate. Matthew Fox is one of them, and so that's just part of the list. But take care, friends, and remember, if everybody's thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking.